Buckle up, because today we're diving into the story of a Marine who defined what it means to lay it all on the line for your brothers. Corporal Jason Dunham wasn't just a name on a memorial. He was a kid from Scioto, New York, who liked messing with engines, getting into friendly scraps over high school sports, and giving people hell in the best way. In 2004, on a dusty street in Iraq, he made a decision that still has Marines shaking their heads in awe. This isn't going to be a sanitized hero fluff piece. It's the real story of a real Marine who made a call none of us ever hoped to face, and did it without hesitation. Because out there, in the middle of nowhere, it's not about abstract ideas of glory. It's about the guy next to you, the men who trust you to watch their back when things go sideways. Scioto, New York isn't exactly famous. It's a blip in Allegheny County, a stretch of two-lane roads lined by farms, old pickup trucks, and small diners that remember your order by heart. Jason Dunham grew up there, born November 10th, 1981, the Marine Corps' birthday, almost like it was written ahead of time. He's the kind of kid that you would call if your dirt bike wouldn't start, or if you needed an extra hand moving hay bales. He played baseball and basketball with a competitiveness that sometimes went past friendly. He didn't like losing, but he liked his friends more. There are stories of him dropping the bat to chase down someone who tried to bully one of his buddies, and later buying that same friend a soda after the dust settled. His parents raised him and his siblings to work. Scioto didn't have a lot of cushy desk jobs or handouts. If you wanted something, you earned it through sweat and sometimes bruised knuckles. Jason took that lesson seriously. He worked side gigs, helped family, learned how to fix almost anything with a wrench and enough stubbornness. Then came September 11th. Like countless other young men who felt their stomach twist watching the towers burn, Jason decided he wasn't going to stay on the sidelines. He walked into a Marine recruiter's office not long after and signed on the line that would send him halfway around the world. Boot camp at Parris Island was a place to strip you down and rebuild you. Drill instructors with voices like thunder, sand fleas that could drive a man insane, and endless rifle drills under a brutal sun. Jason didn't just endure it, he seemed to find purpose in the pain. Other recruits noticed how he'd circle back to help the slower guys, making sure they didn't fail. He carried that same energy to School of Infantry and then to Clio Company, 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines, the 3-7, at 29 Palms. It was a tough, sometimes miserable place. Days often cracked 110 degrees. Dust storms could turn the horizon red, and every exercise felt like it was designed to break you. They trained for everything. Convoy operations under simulated ambush, setting up blocking positions to choke off insurgent movements, breaching rooms in tight stacks where one mistake could kill half the team in blank fire exercises. Through all of it, Jason stood out for taking the mission seriously while still knowing how to keep morale up. He was the guy cracking jokes about the Chow Hall mystery meat one minute, then dead serious about cleaning weapons the next. By 2004, he'd been promoted to corporal and took charge of a squad. That meant he was responsible for other Marines, for making sure they were hydrated, disciplined, fully loaded, and mentally tough enough to go out again tomorrow. It's a responsibility that most people can't fathom until they've done it. Jason never took it lightly. When Clio Company deployed to Iraq, they landed first at Al-Assad. Tents flapped in the constant winds. The sky seemed bigger and somehow more threatening. Convoys rolled through constantly, loaded with pallets of ammo and cases of MREs. Husabad, near the Syrian border, would become their base of operations. It was strategically critical, a funnel point for insurgents slipping across to join the fight against the Americans. Their days blurred together in a loop of tension. Dawn patrols in Humvees that rattled like old farm trucks, gunners behind 50 cal scanning every rooftop for men with RPG tubes. They looked for small tells, fresh fire tracks off the main road, disturbed dirt that could hide artillery shells rigged as IEDs, or lengths of copper wire barely poking through the dry soil. Kids waved sometimes, holding up fingers and peace signs. Just as often, old men glared with dark eyes, conversations stopping as Marines rolled by. Inside homes, when they ran searches, it was a tense dance. Men insisted they had nothing to hide, raised hands, voices shaking. Women huddled in corners. Marines moved room to room, muzzles leading their way, hearts pounding with the thought that any cupboard might hold an AK or an insurgent ready to die. IEDs were the monster in the dark. They tried to outthink them with route changes and ECM jammers that spit static over the radios. Insurgents adapted, burying charges deeper or running command wires hundreds of yards to fire from safety. Every time a convoy halted, Marines tensed, scanning for the triggerman who might be watching them right now, thumb over a switch. At night, indirect fire was a constant threat. Mortars thumped in the dark, sometimes far, sometimes terrifyingly close. Marines lay awake listening for the distinctive whistle, knowing that if they heard it clearly, it was probably meant for someone else. All of it took a psychological toll. Guys who were jokers back at the wire were silent before missions. Others cleaned their rifles so obsessively the metal nearly shone. Jason was always moving, always checking on his Marines, their water, their morale, their state of mind. He cracked dark jokes, passed around cans of dip, kept their heads in the fight. April 14th started like countless other days, with a briefing around a map laid across a dusty hood, squad leaders tracing routes with gloved fingers. Jason's squad rolled out near Carabola, scanning alleys that could easily hide a triggerman with an RPG or a kid with a cell phone set to detonate a buried shell. They moved in loose overwatch, scanning rooftops and intersections, gunners swaying in turrets with fingers light on the triggers. Then the call crackled over the radio. An Iraqi police convoy had been ambushed nearby. Vehicles wrecked, shots fired. The pattern was classic. Strike local forces, melt away, bait the Americans in. Jason's squad didn't hesitate. They rerouted, accelerating through streets that twisted unpredictably, lined by low walls and market stalls. They caught sight of a dark blue SUV moving away fast. In Iraq, speed was its own language. It often meant someone was trying to be somewhere or not be found by Marines with questions. Jason made the call to intercept. His squad boxed the vehicle in. Doors popped open, Marines poured out, rifles up. Jason approached with 2 Marines. The driver sprang out with unexpected force. A scuffle erupted, boots scrabbling on loose gravel, hands grabbing at wrists. That's when the driver dropped the grenade. There was no shouted warning, no cinematic slow motion, just an object clattering to the ground, a sick recognition flashing in Jason's eyes. He ripped off his Kevlar helmet and slammed it down on the grenade. Without a breath of hesitation, he knew his body was over it. The blast was muffled, but still brutal. Marines stumbled back, dirt spraying their legs. When the ringing stopped, Jason lay there, breathing shallow, blood seeping through his camis. His Marines were alive. Corpsmen worked frantically, shouting for tourniquets and gauze. They did everything by the book and beyond. A bird was called in, rotors chopping air, skids kicking up dust. Jason was loaded aboard, face pale, still trying to mumble through shattered breath. He was flown to a field hospital, then to Lendenstuhl in Germany. Doctors stabilized him enough to move again, sending him stateside to Bethesda. His parents arrived, seeing their son among tubes and machines, bandages where a face should have been. Some of his Marines visited, standing awkwardly beside the bed, gripping the rails, whispering thanks and jokes he'd never hear. Doctors were clear. The brain trauma from the blast was catastrophic. On April 22, 2004, life support was withdrawn. Jason was 22 years old. Back in Iraq, his squad kept moving. Patrols still left the wire every morning, still hunted insurgents through courtyards thick with goat droppings, still eyed every culvert like it might explode. But they did it with a raw, sharpened sense of why. They were living proof of what Jason had bought them with his final act. It took years of statements, investigations, signature after signature climbing the chain. Marines who were there wrote it all down, piece by piece. No one wanted bureaucrats to muddy what Jason had done. On January 11, 2007, President Bush presented the Medal of Honor to Jason's parents in the East Room. Jason's Marines stood in blues, faces tight, jaws clenched, backs straight. They knew better than anyone what the little blue ribbon meant and what it had cost. Even as medals were presented back home, Iraq stayed hot. Kilo Company ran more ops in Husaiba, stacking on doors, scanning cluttered rooftops for muzzle flashes. They learned new tricks, checking power lines for spliced wires that might run to roadside bombs, sending out dismounts ahead to prod suspicious dirt with metal rods. They endured long, silent drives where only sound was the Humvee suspension squeaking, everyone waiting for the world to blow. In whispered conversations on dusty cots, Marines admitted to each other that they were alive because of Jason. It was a debt that could never be repaid, only honored by staying sharp, keeping each other alive, and getting home. Today, Scio's high school gym bears Jason's name. A stone monument out front is smooth from hands that trace the letter year after year. On anniversary, the town fills with flags and folding chairs, veterans who fought different wars, kids who've only heard the stories. At Quantico, under glass, sits Jason's helmet. It's torn, warped, a raw testament to a moment that reshaped so many lives. People stop and stare. Some close their eyes, others mouth silent prayers. It's more eloquent than any speech could ever be. Dan and Deb Dunham speak at schools, at Marine gatherings, telling their son's story not with bitterness, but with fierce, quiet pride. They explain that Jason wasn't larger than life. He was a young man from a small town who did something unimaginable because it was who he was. So why does this story matter so much? Because most of us will never have to make that choice. We'll never face a moment where it's them or us, life or death, a grenade on the ground and only seconds to act. Jason did, and he didn't flinch. In that instant, he was everything the Marine Corps says it wants men to be: faithful, fearless, and selfless. He proved that slogans aren't just marketing. They're the code that some live by and some die by. That's why we tell his story, so a kid in Scio, or a recruit at Paris Island, or a Marine in some dusty alley in the next fight knows exactly what it looks like to be willing to give everything for the man standing next to you. Rest easy, Corporal Dunham. We're still telling your story, and we're all better for it. I'm Dave Newton. Consider subscribing for more amazing military history.